I'm so glad you're here. Today, I want to talk about something that was inspired by a child. Children ask the simplest questions, but like I've always said, simple does not mean easy. And I'll never forget being asked, "What does it mean to be good?" When we talk about it. Have you ever thought about that? What is good? What is because especially in an age where everything has a variable, you know, uh, changing meaning. What does it mean being good? I mean, theologically, I can tell you simply being good means living a life that is constantly obedient to God's will, choosing to do the right thing day in and day out. Sounds so simple, doesn't it? Easy to find, impossible to do when you think about it. Can we do good all the time? By our very natures, no, really. You know, as even Paul acknowledged, one of the, if you want to think about it, one of the greatest saints, he said, "I know what I have to do, but I don't do it. The flesh is weak." You've heard that phrase. The flesh is weak. That's talking about the flesh is corrupt. And how many times are we faced with choices, good or bad? Right? Do I take the right fork or the left fork? Do I do the right thing or just forget it? What am I supposed to do? And how am I supposed to do it? Especially right now. I'm not sure about you, but after a year of pandemic, after all of the turmoil in our culture and society, I feel depleted a lot of the time. So not only how do I know what is good, but how do I keep doing good when it seems so much easier to do nothing, which is in a way bad. There's a quote that's often misattributed to a lot of different people. You know, evil thrives when good people choose not to intervene. And there are a lot of different ways to paraphrase it or get that quote, and it's been attributed to a lot of different people. But it's the simple truth that evil or bad flourishes when good people don't stand in the way, don't do something. But I also know that there's no sermon that I can preach. There is no lesson you can attend. There is no self help book that you can read that can compel you to act with integrity and do the right thing always and forever. But, but, and but's very important. It's that eraser in our lexicon that erases what happened. There is a way we can do better. How can I be empowered? How can I be assisted? How can I reorient myself? How can we reorient ourselves so that we can react with good rather than with bad, even when I don't feel like doing the good thing? How can I do it? I think it begins by remember three eternal principles, three principles that Peter talks about and others. But I want to go over those three principles today in a sermon that can help you build the foundation, the mechanisms, the habits that'll help you keep on track and do good. The first, I call it the door opening. I love that image of just opening the door and finding something new. And being good opens the door to God in unique ways. If we remember that being good and doing good opens us to God, not only to find new things, but to discover a new life that only is found in Him. One of my favorite, okay, well, not one of mine, but one of my daughter's favorite books is The Secret Garden. Do you know about the book, The Secret Garden? That story? It's a wonderful story about a little girl who is, well, today we call it abused and stunted. She goes through a lot. I won't give away the story, but she finds a key to a secret garden. And through that door, her life is changed, not just by what she discovers there, but the interaction that happens when she does good in the garden and how she uses that garden to good in the lives of those around her. And in the same way, when we open the door and start doing good, God does good in us. He changes us. God transforms us. Like a mother nurturing a child, she aids us. God is all about transformation and renewal. And when we start doing good, we open the door for God to enter into our lives. But we also see the opportunities and we see the good in the world that is flourishing. And that gives us hope to do more good, and the desire to do more good. Because we realize that doing good, and so this is the second principle, that doing and being good is not a reaction to fear. I'm not sure about you. I think about God and I think about, when I see a set like this, I remember driving or hiking and just seeing the stars come through, and you see the majesty of God in those moments, you know, and you realize God is a God to be feared because he is so mighty. God is a God to be feared because God is awesome. But I used to, when I was a child, a very immature Christian, try to be good because I was afraid. I had that image in my mind of St. Peter at the gate with a book in his hand, looking at all of the bad things I've done. And I hope I had done enough good things to balance that out. You remember that image, right? We see it on television, in the movies, in some really bad and good movies, actually. And in a lot of ways, there are Christians out there who do good for fire insurance. They don't want to end up in the fire, right? So they have that as fire insurance, as they say. But when I grew in my faith, I realized something. First was God had already forgiven me for all of the things I've messed up, continue to mess up, and will mess up in the future. So why am I doing good if it's okay to do bad? The principle I got to remember to understand is being good for a mature Christian is not a reaction to fear. Being good is a reaction to the love and the gifts of God into my life. Doing good and being good is a response to God's overwhelming love for me and the good that he's done for me through Christ and others around me. It's like why I take care of my parents. I watched as a small child as my parents brought us to America. I watched as they gave up, as I understood, didn't understand until later, really successful careers in Korea for the hope that their kids would do and have more opportunities to do better and live better lives for them and for their grandchildren and grandchildren here in America. That overwhelming love that they expressed to me in so many different ways makes me want to help my mother, makes me want to react with care and loving. It's not out of obligation and filial piety, which is a reaction to being the first child in an Asian family. There's a little bit of that too, but more than anything else is a desire to respond to the love I saw in my parents, a sacrificial love. In the same way, when I'm called to do good for God, it's not out of a fear. It's not out of what will I get out of it. It's out of how can I not respond to God, a God who gave everything for me? I see that expressed in so many of the blessings I have around me because of my faith and following Jesus as my Lord and King. So, how can I not do good? How can I not respond to all the gifts God has given to me? And the final eternal truth I have to remember as I try to do good is being good helps me develop the tools I need to be God bearers to the world around us. I learned a long time ago from my father that if you have the right tool, you can fix almost anything. or you can really break it, let's say, to get somebody else to fix it who has the right tools and the knowledge of how to use that tool. I mean, there is an interaction there. But the key for us as God's children is that as we do good, we learn how to do more things for good. We might not have the tools today, but those tools develop. Even tools that we thought we never possessed or we were using in our past lives for bad. God gives us the impetus, the motivation to develop new tools. I speak better today because I took the time to go to a diction coach, an acting coach actually, to help me to speak better in public because I knew I needed public speaking. I didn't like it as a child, and it's not my favorite thing, but I enjoy it more. But I love the story of how even bad things in one life can be transformed to make an impact for good. I read a story years ago about a woman who had locked her cars in the car keys in the car with a small baby in the back seat. And this is in Florida in the summer. She was really, really worried. She looked around for some help and she saw a police officer with three men in orange jumpsuits cleaning the side of the road. So she runs over and asks him, "Can you help me? I locked my keys in the front of the car. I closed the door and didn't realize I'd locked it." And the sheriff looks around. It's like, I don't know. And like, but the but one of the men who's cleaning the side of the road said, "I can help. I used to break into cars, and that's why I'm here today." So they went over, found a coat hanger, and a few minutes later, the door was unlocked. In a lot of ways, for me, that story resonates. Even something that got that inmate in a lot of trouble, that was used for ill in one life, can be converted and used for God's glory in another. And that's the thing we need to remember. God can take whatever we have and use it for his glory, for God's purpose to help those around us. We just have to be careful to do good and see what opportunities God places before us because it's a fight. And this is a slide that you'll see for the rest of the series. It's about we keep fighting to do good even when we don't feel like it. We got to keep fighting the good fight. As we come out of the lockdown, we are going to be so excited. Like I know I am about coming out of this, that I want to do all the things I couldn't do in this past year, all the things to feed myself and my family, maybe, if I'm being a little bit less, narcissistic. But the challenge for us in this is to remember all of the other things that God calls us to do for the world around us that we haven't been able to do for the past year and figure out how we're supposed to plug in. Now, you're not supposed to do everything, that's impossible. But how are you particularly called? And how are you going to sustain yourself after a year plus? So, I want to give you a way I do it, and I want to challenge you to do it this week. How do I keep going? How do I keep being encouraged to do good for God? Is to remember His love, and one way to do it is to get a concordance. And if you need me to photocopy a couple pages of that for you, give me an email. Get a concordance and look up every time the Bible talks about God's love for us, and look up those verses. Write them down on a card if you want, just the verse numbers, and just read about them and sit in them and then do something about it. Even as we're locked down, we can do some really good things that don't take a lot of our time or our effort. As we, take an hour to go out with your family and go clean up a block. Just walk down, pick up the trash for Earth Day. You're helping God's creation, and you might inspire some other people. Write a thank you note to somebody. Say, I wishing to see you. Thank you for being in my life. Take the time to make a contact. There's so much you can do that can make a real impact in the world around you if we remember the God's love and his call for us to do good. And here's a little other thing that I just want to point out. You know, doing good and doing bad seems very easy, black and white. But often the problem isn't that we choose not to do good, is often we choose to do easy. And that's also a bad thing. God doesn't call on us for easy. God calls on us for good. And it's not difficult to figure out what that is, but it's really difficult to do it all the time. But with God, even the impossible is possible. So just think about it, pray about it, maybe write a card full of verses about how God has done good for us through his love, and see what happens. See how you can be the difference this world needs. Let's go to God in prayer and ask him to help us.